How are you, everyone? Today we are going to introduce a new chapter in our novel Prisoner of Zenda. This is a chapter with the title A Question of Honor. Let's first start by knowing what I mean by this honor. Honor means the action of doing something that is morally right, that makes people respect and admire you. So we will start first our chapter by revising what happened in the previous one. Through some questions, let's start. The first question, where was the king? He was in the castle of Zenda. And then what did Sab throw on the table? He threw a letter. Who wrote this letter? Antoinette de Mauban. What did Antoinette ask Rosendal to do? To go to the summer house to tell him an important thing about his life. And then what would Rosendal do to protect himself in the summer house? Sabt would go with him, but he had to wait outside the gate. Then, why was Rosendal in great danger? Because Michael's men were following him, of course, to kill him. What was the offer which Ditchard took about? They could offer Rosendal a safe journey to the borders and 50,000 English pounds. And then, what did Rosendal do to protect himself from Michael's men? He picked up an iron table and held it by the legs to be in front of him. Then, why wasn't Rosendal hit by the men's bullet? The man's bullet, of course, didn't hit him as they hit the iron table. Then, how did Rosendal escape from the summer house? He climbed the ladder as Antoinette told him, and then climbed over the wall out of the gate. Then let's comment. All right, sir, I have an offer for you. These words were said by Ditchard to Rosendal when he went to Rosendal to give him an offer from Michael, but of course Rosendal refused that. The second quotation, in 20 minutes, 3 men will be here to kill you. These words were said by Antoinette de Mauban to Rosendal when they were in the summer house. She told him that the 3 men will come to kill him and they would take him to a low part of the town. The last quotation, it's a pretty plan, but why, madame, do you? These words were said by Rosendal to Antoinette when she told him about the plan. It was killing Rosendal, then killing the real king, and arresting Sabt and the friends. So this is a review of the previous part, and let's start our new chapter. We will start our chapter by saying that the next day Rosendal knew from secret police reports that Michael and 3 had left Strelsau. His 3 men with him left Strelsau, with them Ditchard with a wounded arm. Rosendal was glad, of course, to hear that he had left his mark on the man. Antoinette de Mauban had also left with them. They could only be going to Zenda, of course. Then he found a statement in one of the reports which saying, the king is much criticized for taking no steps about his marriage. So it's believed that the Princess Flavia is also sad. Then many people are mentioning her name together with that of the Duke of Strelsau. Also, Fred told Rosendal that Countess Helga told him that Flavia was already much in love with the king. And after saying all these things, Rosendal cried, saying, enough, stop this. Sab told Rosendal that they had ordered a great dance to be held tonight in this royal palace in the prince's honor. Rosendal said that it's something new for him and he wasn't very pleased. Sept asked him in his sharp voice that he must offer her marriage in this party. Do you think Rassendel will agree to offer Princess Flavia the marriage? No, of course. Rassender refused, saying that he won't share in any plan to make a fool of the princess, so he won't trick her. Sept said, all right, we mustn't press you to four, but you have to talk nicely to her. Fred told Rassendel that Sept gave up these arguments about speaking words of love because he knew himself that the beauty of the princess and Rassendel's own feeling would carry him further than all this argument. And Sabt is thinking also that if the king was saved, he would have to marry her himself, of course, either knowing or not knowing this change. But if the king wasn't saved, it's believed that Sabt intended to keep him on the throne. He will keep Rassendel on the throne rather than let Black Michael get the throne. Then the dance started and it was great. In this time, Rassendel took a chain from around his neck, which is a red rose of Britannia, hung and placed the chain over her head. Then everyone cheered, of course. And when they were all over, Sabt become away and friends, and in this time Rassendel was alone with Princess Flavia in a latter room. Of course he was struggling with himself, and she asked him, do you love me? He answered, of course I love you. And also she said to him that she loves him now, Rodolphe. And this happened just lately, and she never did this before. She never loved him before. So guys, try to think what is the effect of these words on Rassendel. Of course, he felt very pleased because this word now means that she loved him as Rassendel, not the real king. Okay, and then he asked her, what if I weren't the king? She answered, also, I should love you just the same. There was still a chance to save his honor and tell her the truth. So he started saying, Flavia, I am not, and stopped. Then he heard heavy steps outside. Then Sabt appeared. So of course his half-finished sentence died on his lips. So guys, you can continue the sentence yourself. He wanted to say to her that I am not. Yeah, I am not the real king. Sabt told him that a group of lords have been waiting to say goodbye. And this time, Rassendel's eyes met Sabt's eyes, and he read in them an angry warning to him. He didn't know how long has Sabt been listening to their conversation. Flavius said, but Colonel Sabt, I'm so happy now. He said to her, God save you, madame, and first, God save the king. Rassendel went into the dance room and saw Sabt spreading the news he had learned about Rassendel and the princess. He did all this, guys, because Sabt wants to keep the crown of the king for him and in the same time beat Black Michael. That was his aim. The news spread fast, and while Rassendel handed the princess into her carriage, the crowd were waiting for them with thundering cheers. Of course, Sabt's track and his uncontrolled feeling made the way back closed behind him. And at the end, Rassendel was alone with Sabt and Fred. He suggested again going to Zenda and crush Black Michael and bring the real king back. to stop all this game and not to lose his honor and track Princess Flavia. Sabt took his hand, saying a great sentence to him. He said to him, guys, you are the finest Elfberg of them all. Of course, he is praising him for all the things he bear and for all the good things he did and about to do. So finally, they decided to go to Zinda. Now, guys, I want you to think. Do you think it's easy for Rosendal to take this decision? Do you think it's easy? And what does it tell you about his manners, about his personality, to take all this risk to save somebody he doesn't know him, who is the king? So plans were quickly made. Rosendal gave Marshal Strachan says, who is Marshal Strachan says? Can you remember him? He's the chef of the army. He gave him orders to what to do if the king was killed. He thought that he was going on a dangerous journey, and Marshal said to him, God preserve your majesty. He answered that he hoped no life more important than his life may be demanded. So this is a great sentence from Rosendal, hoping that if it's just my life, okay, never mind. But not somebody else's life may be demanded. This great sentence proved that he is ready to sacrifice his life to save the king. Okay, it's of course difficult to tell Princess Flavia that the king was going on a hunting trip. Rosendel's tear fell of her eyes, so he said to her, I am not leaving you to hunt wild bags, but Black Michael is a wild bag we are hunting. She returned pale and asked him when he will come back. He answered, I don't know, but he promised to come back and see her, and so St. Michael's would not keep him from here, and that comforted her. But of course there was one person, not Michael, who, as if he loved, would keep him from here. Who is this person? Yes, of course he is the real King Rodolph V. Okay, if you are in Rosendel's situation, guys, would you go and save the person who will take the person you love, or what will you do? Of course, this is a difficult question. You have to think of it. Then, the next day, he was in the train with Sapt, Fred, and the 10 gentlemen. These gentlemen specially chosen to this mission. They had been told something of the story, not all the story, something of the story of the attack in the summer house, and that Michael was trying to get the throne, and a friend of the king's was a prisoner in the castle of Zenda. And one of the purposes of the journey was to save this friend. This young, well-educated, brave, and loyal man asked no more. It was enough for them that their king needed them, and they were ready to serve him to death. Then they were going to the castle of Torlingham, which belongs to Fred's uncle. This castle was a modern building about 5 miles from Zenda. On the opposite side, Michael's castle lay. It stood on top of a hill with woods all around, in which wild bags were known to be common. But is hunting wild bags really their purpose? Of course no. The real reason to choose it was because it brought them within a short distance of Black Michael, so they are near Black Michael now. Michael would not be deceived by the story of hunting, of course. So he didn't believe the thing. He knew well why they had come, and he will prevent them from doing what they wanted. This is one of the difficulties, and also there was another difficulty, which is to be a king. This means that every movement you made must be in public. And the reason it was to get the king out of this castle of Zenda alive. This is their only purpose, to take the king alive. They don't need force. Their only chance lay in some trick. So they won't use force, they will use their trick. They knew that Michael would not kill the king until he had killed Rossendal first. So he thought that Rossendal was acting for honor, but for himself. This is according to Duke Michael's view. They thought that Rossendal isn't doing all the things to be courageous or to gain honor, but he's doing all that for himself. He couldn't understand that a man in this position could do something to put another one in his place. So, in Michael's view, Rossendal's aim in coming to Zenda was to get the king killed so that he could have the throne and the princess. Do you think this is true, guys? Of course, no. He really wants to save the king, and this gave him courage, because Michael would keep the king alive as long as he possibly could. Comes the end of this chapter to move to the most important and exciting part in our novel. Keep following and think some moments of these questions. Will Rossendal succeed in achieving his aim and save the king? And will he be able to save himself? We will know all this soon. And now let's discuss some questions together. The first question: what did Rossendal learn from the secret police reports? He learned that Michael and the three men had left Strelso. And then, how did Rossendal know that his shot was a good one? When he heard that Ditchard had wounded Orm. And then, what was the king criticized for? He was criticized for taking no steps about his marriage. What did Countess Helga tell Fritz? She told him that Flavia was already much in love with the king. And then number 5, what did Sapt order Rossendal to do during the grand dance? He ordered him to offer Flavia marriage. What stopped Rossendal from telling the princess the truth? He heard a heavy step outside the window, and Sapt appeared. Then why did Rossendal decide to leave for Zenda and rescue the king as soon as possible? Because he couldn't continue pretending to be the king, and that wasn't fair for the princess, as he is tricking her. Then what had the 10 gentlemen been told about the purpose of the journey to Zenda? They were told about the summer house attack and Michael's plans to take the throne. They were also told that a friend of the king was a prisoner in the castle of Zenda, and that one of the purposes of the journey was to save him. And then, what was the real purpose of the journey to Zenda? It was to get the king out of the castle of Zenda alive. And at the end, in Michael's opinion, what was Rossendal's real aim in coming to Zenda? Duke Michael thought that Rosendal wanted to get the king killed so that he could have the throne and the princess. And now let's comment on some quotations. All right, my boy, we mustn't press you too far. These words were said by Sapt to Rosendal when Sapt asked him to offer Flavia marriage when he spoke to her, but he refused to do that because he didn't want to make a fool of her, as he wasn't the real king. The second quotation saying, I mustn't keep them waiting. These words were said by Rosendal to Sapt when he interrupted his conversation with Flavia to prevent him from telling her the secret. He was speaking about some lords who wanted to say goodbye to the king. The last quotation, do you dream I should leave you and go hunting? These words were said by Rosendal to Flavia when she was sad to know that he is going hunting. He told her that he is going to hunt Duke Michael. This is the end of this chapter, and still excited and wait for the following session. Thank you for listening. See you soon.